Commissioner Sullivan cited that Mr. Dearborn had so much other land, he questioned why Mr. Dearborn needed to expand his operation in this direction. Mr. Dearborn suggested the other land is for sale and people are looking at it. He doesn't want to use that land because it's for sale. He wants to keep his operation in this one location. The applicant's own statements at this meeting on July 24th show that he does not need to expand into the 100-foot buffer and that he can use other land, but he doesn't want to because he wants the ability to be able to sell it. The admission by the applicant demonstrates that this variance request does not comply with 903.3D. The granting of this variance also would grant the applicant a special privilege that other people who would apply for and operate under this special use permit that wouldn't have. Because he would be able to use his property in this expanded or in this reduced buffer area where other people coming through with new applications would not be able to use that. The applicant's own statements and the GIS map I've provided show that the requested variance is not the minimum that would be possible for the reasonable use of this land. Mr. Dearborn right now is, reasonably using his land for his mulching operation. Yes, there are wetlands on the site, but he's gained a wetlands permit for those activities. He could gain another wetlands permit, access the site in a different area to use other parts of his area outside the 100-foot buffer. Finally, the granting of this variance would be injurious to the neighbors. It would be detrimental to the public welfare, and it would have a negative impact on property values. I know in your packet there's a letter from OR&L Commercial stating that in the opinion of the realtor, it's his opinion that reducing the setback would be detrimental to the value of the Wilcox property. It would be a major obstacle in finding a tenant for his new building. I believe the petition has already been submitted for the record. That is signed by 6 neighbors around the area. One of them is my client. It's signed by the owners of 50, 53, 54, 63, 75 Newberry Road, and also 7 Craftsman Road, stating their concerns about this reduction in buffer to noise, debris, dust, and fire risk. A denial of this variance by the board would not amount to a taking because the applicant still can use his property, other areas of his property, outside the 100-foot buffer for his business. As the board knows, the variance power should be exercised sparingly and only under exceptional circumstances. What I did hear tonight from Mr. Hefkes in the applicant is they've implied that this is a small request, that they're just looking for a little bit more. So I'd like to remind the board of the Varillo v. ZBA case that came out in 2015, which found that the fact that a requested variance might be very minor in scope or de minimis does not make it a legal hardship sufficient to support the grant of the variance. I just want to make sure that the board is refreshed about that case. We believe that the applicant has failed to prove all the required subsections of 903.3. Therefore, we believe that you should deny his request for a variance. I'm happy to answer any questions, as is my client.
Any questions from the board? Anyone?
It was stated that there is dust and debris that goes onto your property. Have you gotten any pictures of proof of that by any chance?
Excuse me?
You had mentioned that there was a lot of debris and there's mulch clippings and stuff like that that go onto your property. Do you have any pictures to show or verify that?
No, I never took pictures of the stuff coming across over there. The noise, it's hard to take a picture of noise is going on. But my main concern is, since you opened that up that way, my main concern is in the past 4 or 5 years, I've had a permit to put up, I'd like to point this out, where the buildings are going to be at. I've been working with the real estate people to get, naturally, a developer like myself wants to get the client before they put the building up. So the building is going in here, eventually it's going to go down this whole property on. We can put buildings, and doing buildings, you landscape them, make them beautiful, and you do them 20 feet from the property line. So our buildings are going to be all bordered in this property. But this with this variance that he wants to move within 25 feet and have the access road 15 feet, driving those big tractor trailers in the piles that zoning already gave him 35 feet high. You're going to be 45 feet from my building. Now, he's already got problems with the BMW dealer that's next door, which is right here. Because Mr. Dearborn permit was to leave his mulching machines in one spot, mulch his material, and move it to different spots. He elects, and this has been an ongoing thing for the years, to move his mulching machine next to the property line so he don't have to move his mulching piles, mulch his material with the big crushers, and I don't do it here. We work with, Jose, I think it's over Bloomfield, we work with Modern Materials in Bloomfield to do crushing. These mulching machines makes as much and more noise than a rock crusher. If you ever get next to one, it's loud and louder than a rock crusher. So you're in the same category here, guys. The same category, recycling this material. Now he elects to put his grinding machines next to the property line, as we talk, on a daily basis, and run them till the buildings are shaking. But I can't get a client to come in. I just got an extended on my permit to try to get people to move in. They see what's going on. I put box trailers here next to the property line temporarily to hold out the sound. I got a pile of material here. I don't truck in and out of that place. That material is to use to put that building up when I get to it. Put inside of it. I got 47,000 square feet permitted to put in there. And I have the recycle here, way back from the property line, neatly piled to put inside of the building. We do all our operations out of Bloomfield, out of Modern Materials. I have tractor trailers that only park there. The regulations on tractor trailers, which the town of East Windsor doesn't have setbacks on tractor trailers. It's only 10 feet. We keep them way back. That's all it goes in and out of it. They park over here. King Cole Mattress comes in and out of my property, lines it up. But the major problem is here, the major problem is Mr. Dearborn will not follow where it was intended to keep his crushing down by his steel metal building. And crush there, put it over. He elects to move that crusher all around over that property and crush. Now you pass the zoning that he wants, this variance, and move it next to it. Now we're going to have a crusher right on top of us. He makes it set it right on top of my building. That's pretty basic what's going to happen. And we got neighbors all around us that can tell you the same thing. He's led to believe that I got a grudge him. I ain't got a grudge. I'm trying to tell him to build some buildings. This is what I'm trying to do over there. I had a crushing permit on that property that I had. I elected not to do it. I elected years ago, do my crushing, do my work in Bloomfield, and have this turn it into industrial buildings and office buildings. I want to have an office, part of that building be office and industrial, and lease it out. I'm in a problem right now. I've been working on it. I switched to another real estate agent, O&L. And they said they can try to get somebody in there now. So they said, Jerry, you can't allow them to come any closer to it. You can't do it. We're not going to get your clients. So that's where we're at. Mr. Dearborn had plenty of room. He owned right in here. He bought 5 acres of land. This is a map.
It's in the black.
Let's try to lay this on the line exactly, crystal clear, what he has here. This is the additional 5 acres he had that borders this property, that borders Crafton Road. There's no wetlands at all, just on the edge on each side. Here, we have photographs we gave you people that at this time, today, he's got Holden bulldozer moved in. He's filling on the end of his detention pond. right in here. He's trucking material, then around this side, he built a road through here. And in this area here, he's got piles, I got pictures of him I showed you people. All in here, he's filling this. Pictures is worth 1,000 words.
Well, let me stop you there. I don't see what the relevance of that is to the variance.
Because-
that would be an enforcement issue.
Well, it is, but he's saying it's wetlands and he can't do it. He can't fill and use the land. He's filling it as we talk.
Right, we submitted that. Mr. Wilcox did submit that to Matt so that he could look into a possible wetlands violation. There is obviously a wetlands permit, so the question is he within the wetlands permit or not? The point of why I chose to bring it as part of my presentation is because I think it goes against the comment that the wetlands are preventing him from doing the mulching operation. They're not preventing him from doing his mulching operation because there's our wetlands. He secured a permit and he's able to do the work. So that was the point of those pictures.
And this where he's filling it, he's coming through here, through this area between the two wetlands. He's got the area, he put a road in here. He can come right here, he's got all that 5 acres here, he's got all this land here that he can utilize. He has plenty of land around that he can put a road around. In most cases, this wetland is, what I heard Mr. Hestig was talking, that this was wetlands here, this is low-grade wetlands. In most cases, as a developer, you go before a board and present a plan where you can relocate wetlands. They have a lot of things they do on low-grade wetlands. Can be relocated. He could end up having all this. You know, can I say that that's what he's going to do? I'm sure that's what he's going to try to do down the road, because that makes a lot of sense. That wetland, on low grade, they could be shifted if he wanted to, and he could just keep moving this way. And I'm pretty certain that they would go along with it if he gave up some of this over in here, put the wetlands over here, come up with the right kind of a plan. But right now, he's going through here. He's got the 5 acres down there. He can go on that if he gets a permit. You know, if he gets a permit before he takes the stumps all out and clears it. But that's something he never did. Took stumps out anyway.
Does this board?
But the point is, the land is his and the board is that property. And he's got plenty of land to do it. That's a fact.
Thank you.
Scott, anything else?
What else do we have?
Hey, anyone else? Mr. Slate?
Everything that Dearborn has there is done by the Army Corps of Engineers. They came in and took care of this years ago. It was a wetlands issue.
You know that for a fact? Or, I mean,
Yeah, I know that.
Either way, I don't know what the relevance would be.
Well, the relevance is the grading of the property, so it grades down into that pond. If he moves over to the other side there, the grading goes the other way.
Yes, and I think our point of saying that other portions of the site could potentially be used, that would be in conjunction with a wetlands permit, perhaps another zoning permit. I know when you do a special use permit, you're looking at drainage. And our suggestion isn't that he would use the ponds and the drainage scheme that he has now. It's definitely possible
Yeah, that would be
it would be a whole nother process.
It would be a different board's jurisdiction.
But I think what we're trying to point out to the board, the land is there. He can use it. It's usable land.
You heard you.
That's all I'm trying to point out.
Any other questions from the board before we ask for more? No. But the public? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll take comments and for, against, and any questions. Feel free to ask questions if
I'd like to speak if I can.
Yes, you can. Please come up there. You need to identify yourself.
My name is Doug McClary. I'm the operations supervisor. We at a facility at 7 Craftsman Road. We've been leasing that building now for over 35 years. We do tight tolerance cutting of metal alloys for the aerospace industry. One of the things that a couple weeks ago, and it was brought up about noise and vibration. I've been in manufacturing my whole life. I know what vibration is. We're at a steel building. It's about 20,000 square feet. We have a couple bandsaws in there, a few lathes that we do some work. At 7 Craftsman Road, the property, Mr. Dearborn's property, is bordering our south and our east. Now the corn is directly to the east. I have never measured how close it is to our property line, don't know, not really sure where this is gonna go. But there were 2 days that my folks came from the floor and they could not do their job, okay? There was a very loud humming, and I was sitting in my office and my desk, I could feel it vibrating, okay? I was not mistaken what I felt. I went outside, I did not go through the woods to see what was going on, but it was coming from the property directly south of us, okay? Don't know what it was. I really think that maybe further investigation needs to be done, because if the machine to do the grinding is being moved around the property, I can't have it that close to our building. We're doing tight tolerance cutting. I don't want to risk that vibration throwing off the electronics of our equipment. If that throws something off, it could be significant monetary damages for our facility. And I really can't allow that. We've been there, like I said, over 35 years. We plan on staying, as long as nothing interferes with our operations. At that point, I don't know what I'd have to tell my corporate office. We do have one thing, I don't know if any of you have driven down Craftsman Road in the winter, but between 7 Craftsman Road, just to the west of us, we get a lot of water comes through our property, between the 2 properties. Now this happened, started happening several years ago when the property started to be clear cut. And on Craftsman Road, there is a large patch of ice every time, okay? And it doesn't freeze in the lawn, it's bleeding through. Now it could be underground water, don't know. But it is kind of dangerous. If you ever have a chance in the winter, there is water flowing across that road. It's something that, we've been in that building 35 years. It's nothing that we had done. It started when the clear cutting started up there. I have concerns also, as you brought up, those cornfields that are directly to the east of us. I look off my loading dock and they're not far from the edge of our driveway. And they're a lot closer to Craftsman Road than you would think. I would not want to see that machine over in that quadrant, okay? And if the corn is just there as a temporary buffer, as farmland or whatever it is, if that came that close to us, I don't know how close it was when we felt that vibration, but it was very, very annoying. And I should have taken a camera and went through the woods and investigated. I wish I did.
That's the area that we're at question here.
Yeah, I'm right in the corner of it.
Right, but even the vibration up here, I mean, he already has permission to vibrate here, so this 60 feet he's asking for is not really gonna make a difference.
Understand.
And this corn, we're not talking about grinding.
Yeah, we're not gonna do back and forth.
Okay.
I'm just making my point.
you're right.
Okay, I have concerns.
Let's hear all the comments, and if we have questions.
And one thing you might want to look at is the water runoff coming down across
I
that
have
road.
just a
It
point
is
of
a safety hazard.
clarification. He indicated south of Craftsman Road, he saw vibration. So I
North.
just, this is south.
North, I'm sorry, north and east.
North.
Just
My-
wanted
my mistake.
clarification.
North and east.
Okay, that's fine.
My mistake, thank you. But yeah, that's one thing. When he was down, if he is permitted to be right behind our building and run that, if I knew that was gonna happen, I would probably, if it's gonna be a full-time thing, I'd probably have to look at moving our facility. We've been there 35 years, I'd like to stay in town, but I can't risk, if that's like gonna be a full-time thing, I don't know if it ever will affect the equipment, but if it does, one miscut could be $10,000, $20,000, one cut. What we're cutting is expensive, so. All right, I want to thank you for your time, but if you do have the chance to look into it further, I don't know if you ever had any reports of ice on Craftsman Road. It could be water runoff that was caused by clear cutting that, so that might have to be addressed in how the drainage
Again,
is.
I don't know whether that would be our
Okay.
jurisdiction, but yeah, I've seen that.
Thank
Seen
you.
that in the winter. Anyone else want to come up and speak, or against, or question? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Mike LeBrecq. I'm the owner of LeBrecq Autocraft on 63 Newberry Road, which is across from Dearborn property. And just basically a couple of basic concerns I have. I was at the meeting when Mr. Dearborn bought the property, the zoning meeting initially in 2008, and I had brought up some questions to the board, fire issues and some of the areas where the mulch piles were going to be, and also someone on the board had mentioned even some aesthetics, some trees and a fence that was supposed to be erected when the property was purchased. Because my business is right across the street, I can see firsthand on a daily basis what goes on. I do have dust, depending on where the mulching machine is moved to, that drifts right across onto the vehicles that are parked in my parking lot. It's not a daily occurrence, but it happens again, depending on how dry it is and where the machine is located. The machine does get moved. The machine is very noisy. I can hear it in my office with the doors closed and the windows shut. At the time when Mr. Dearborn bought the property, there were also concerns about hours of operation. Because I'm self-employed and I also don't feel I need to hinder on anybody else's business because everybody's trying to make a living. I'm there sometimes on Saturday or Sunday. And the mulching machine and the operations are going on 7 days a week on occasion. And I remember there were supposed to be some constraints with hours of operation when the property was first purchased. I also purchased 2 acres of property adjoining mine where I'm planning at some point possibly erecting another building, which I may sell or rent. So I do have a concern. Right now, the value of my property is a concern. I did not do any research to find out exactly if it's detrimental or not, but common sense says that when we have commercial buildings all the way around that property and having that mulching operation there and now moving it right close to the street, I think would be detrimental to the value of my property. I also had a concern back in 2008 about fire issues. And I actually raised some questions where the board had the fire marshal call me and talk to me about a couple of questions I had because at the time the board didn't have an exact answer. I don't know exactly, but I would just look back to past history. My concern is that if a business isn't conforming to the regulations and zoning codes operating and then a variance is issued, is that business going to continue to conform to even the added variance? I think if you look at past history, I think there's been some issues. I have seen fire trucks on that property. On occasion, I've seen fires put out by the owner on occasion. As of this week, there are sprinklers running on the mulch piles, and you can see them smoldering. It's something that if anybody drove by, you could witness firsthand. So my concern is obviously my property, my business. I have a lot of money and time invested in my business. I'm directly across the street. I would be very concerned that if there was a fire, I don't think the fire trucks would get there by the time it traveled possibly across the street to my building. So again, I just feel that if there's any rules or regulations that are in place, they need to be conformed to. And if this application is going to be approved, my concern is that the issues are going to be adhered to and that everything zoning related, any regulations are in place and being adhered to now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Paul Anderson, 89.
If you want to come a little closer, we're trying to, for the record, I don't know whether that'll pick up that far away.
Oh,
But
yeah, no.
you're welcome to come and sit here. I think over there was fine, but I'm not sure there.
That's fine. Okay. Paul Anderson, 89 Main Street, Broadbrook. Real short. I lean towards business growing. So my thoughts on this tend to lean towards allowing the variance so business can grow. I'm a great believer in growth, and I would think that if more of the land becomes usable, then the assessment may go up. that would be a benefit to the town. That's all I've said.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once, going twice, I'll give the applicant a chance to respond. Anyone else? 3 times, okay. You have,
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Guy Hesketh, just a couple of things. I've probably been before the Planning and Zoning and Wetlands Commission for projects related to this parcel or variations of applications for this parcel over the last 5 or 6 years. And Mr. Wilcox has, I think, come to every meeting and submitted many times pictures of activities similar to what you see today. I'm just kind of surprised that with all of the dust and stuff blowing on this parcel, he doesn't have one picture of that. Just wanted to throw that out for the record. I think it's a real concern. He's demonstrated clearly for the record in the public forum that anytime there's any issue, he takes pictures of it, sends it to staff, reads it to the commission, and distributes those. I just find that interesting. A couple of other things. The gentleman on Craftsman Road indicated that there was some vibration one day. Steve indicated to me that in preparation for his lot for some development, that Mr. Wilcox actually had a vibratory compactor that he was using. I don't know, was that in the last month or so?
Yeah, within a month.
So I don't know if you have a date when that was going on, and no exact date. Yeah, it's possible, you know, vibratory compactors are actually designed to vibrate earth for compaction. Perhaps Mr. Wilcox could address that if he actually used the vibratory compactor on his property over the last month. That may be perhaps what you're seeing, I don't know. I don't have any information on that. I have been out to the site when the grinder is being used, and it does make noise, like all construction equipment does, but I didn't notice any vibration, similar to my experience with them with the vibratory compactor. So I just want to throw that out. That might be something Mr. Wilcox could clarify. If that's the case, then in construction, that's something obviously that would have some vibration. That's a possibility. The fire issues, again, we heard that. Again, this application was brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission for the special permit, and that received review from all of town staff, including the fire marshal. The fire marshal has looked at the plan. He's had comments. His input was utilized, again, for the perimeter access road, which you see around the periphery of the site, which provides access from Newberry Road around the perimeter of the site for access to those mulch piles. There's also a height restriction on the mulch piles, which, at the request of the fire marshal, so that the height of the pile would only be a certain size and separation distances to allow equipment between them. Those were the recommendations of the fire marshal that were incorporated in the special permit. Regarding compliance, I heard a gentleman indicate that he's concerned about the compliance for the site. Again, as I mentioned before, annually, Mr. Dearborn is required to submit for the record an as-built drawing demonstrating compliance with the permit. And several times over the last several years, some neighbors have actually brought complaints to staff. Staff have gone out, and I'll let staff testify to that, to correct any inconsistencies or any issues that have been done have been duly met by Mr. Dearborn. So he is operating in compliance with the approved special permit site plan that he has. I think that's pretty much really what I have to say on that. Again, I'd like to stress again for the record that due to the presence of the constraints, physical constraints for the inland wetlands, we believe that we have a legitimate hardship for the property. Steve, I think you might want to say a couple of things.
Can I just ask you a quick question? Is the access road on the property, is that for trucks or just fire?
But we drive around it. The thing you need
So
it
that-
for it too is so you can push the wood up with the
So
loader.
it's not just for fire access?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. It's a perimeter access for
So it is perimeter.
for
Okay,
operations.
Just we run around with the loader and we scrape the edges. Everything
Okay.
at my place is straight, it's clean.
That's fine.
Okay, but I'd like to address something too. I heard some comments here. I'm sorry that some of the public is ignorant in the mulch making operation. The sprinkler's going on the top of my pile, and people going by will see me shooting water from the cannon up onto the piles. That has nothing to do with fire. What that does is it pushes the aging process to get the wood to darken up and get dark for your natural mulch, the natural without the color. The colored stuff, we can grind it this morning. We're pumping water on it as we grind it. We put the dye in the afternoon and we finish it the next day with the new wood. But the natural has to age for 1.5 years or so. But we pump water on it to get it to age. Okay, so just to make it clear, the water you see flying around there, it's not for fire protection. It's not to prevent fires. And because the wood is aging and cooking, on a cold morning, you will see steam coming out of those piles. It is not fire. It's the aging process, okay? Now, if a pile could catch on fire and go across that dirt and across the green lawn and go across a paved road, another green lawn to get to a building to set it on fire, I'd like somebody to show that to me. I'll pay $1 million if someone could show me how that could happen, okay? And the vibration is from a vibratory roller. The guy on Craftsman Road said his place is shaking. His building's way over there. We're doing the grinding over next to Newberry Road. There's no way possible. But Mr. Wilcox is constantly adding millings to his property and rolling it on a regular basis. And all the water flows to my property, actually gets into my pond that I built, goes around in a swale and over to the culvert underneath. Now, the gentleman talked about ice. Any one of you can drive over there. All his property, his building, everything is higher than my land. So my water's not going up like this and coming down in front of his place on Craftsman Road. That ice is not on in front of my property. It's up in front of his. And where it's coming from, the water travels underground over there. It runs on top of the clay and pops out with the least resistance. Okay? And that's what's going on over there. It ain't from me. So I just wanted to clarify a few things about this fire that people think's going on with the steam and the vibration, which is impossible. Stand near any of my machines when I'm grinding, there's no vibration. They're on rubber tires. No vibration whatsoever. But that's all I got to say, I guess. I mean, it's up to you guys.
I do have one more question now.
Shoot.
You said when you first got the special permit, there were no specific regulations governing. So if I looked at the regulations, looked like the regulations for...
You mean for operation?
Right, for wood chipping and all that came into play on around 2014, according to the
No, I think there were some. I'd have to go back and look at the original approval. I think there were some conditions of hours of operation.
Well, right, there were, but I'm saying the specific ones governing...
The setbacks?
Governing wood chipping operations came later.
Yeah, they were promulgated, I think it was in 2014.
I think I looked at it. So at that time...
When I was there in 2007.
Let me ask my question.
Yeah.
At that time, were you aware that the Planning and Zoning Commission was enacting regulations governing wood chips?
No, I was never notified.
So, in general...
Yeah, but that's kind of interesting too.
That was a surprise to me.
That came in after our initial application. I think it might even have been a couple of years after we were originally approved. And there was interactions between Mr. Dearborn and staff routinely at that time, and it was never brought to his attention. I'm sure it was published in the newspaper, but we found that rather odd that staff would not have, since he was the only operation in town that was actually doing the mulching, that would have been brought to his attention.
This was, I had seen it, was it?
Yeah, 2014.
I wonder whether there was any...
One other thing.
I don't know that they actually, there was some discussion during the deliberations at the original meeting that they didn't have a regulation and it was geared towards the gravel operations.
So they said at that time you got 75 feet.
Yes, that's correct.
And that was right, okay.
But originally, when I got the approval to do the mulching operation, we had no setbacks. I was there for 4 or 5 years before everything started heating up and they decided they wanted to throw the setback at me. I was there for 4 or 5 years. There was no setbacks given to me to say you had to be so many feet from the line. Back when I first got the approvals.
But you got a special permit and you obviously wasn't appealed, so we're living with a 75-foot setback currently.
That's correct.
That's just what I want to get that straight. Okay, is that it?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Anyone else? Paul?
Mr. Vander, one more thing I wanted to bring up. I noticed there's a retail operation.
Can you say your name again? So.
Paul Anderson.
Thank you.
The retail operation in town that stores mulch at their property. Certainly not the same height, but just as a point of reference.
Again, it's not,
Mulch next to a property line is not necessarily a detriment.
well, again, that's what's happening elsewhere. We're considering this application in this property. That's for
Fine.
planning and zoning staff to look into whether or not it applies. That's not our call. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, name's Stanley, 87 Rye Street.
You can come a little closer so we can pick you up. Again, repeat your name.
Rand Stanley, 87 Rye Street. It would appear to me that, to a certain degree, the rules changed after the fact. It would also appear to me that in many instances, we've only got 1 or 2 other operations that would fall under a volume reduction facility, which is my understanding what Mr. Dearborn's facility is considered under the rules. Volume reduction. I may be wrong, but I don't think so. It would seem to me that his facility would probably more closely mirror a contractor's storage yard, because in a contractor's storage yard, you can host or hold any number of different items, okay, from soils to millings to gravel to mulch to any other number of things. And it would seem to me that if the rules were changed in 2014, I can't help but wonder if they weren't changed just specifically for Mr. Dearborn's property. There is an elephant in the room, and I'm sure this commission probably doesn't want to address it. And it probably doesn't have much to do with a hardship, but that property's probably been scrutinized more than any other piece of property in this town, unless, of course, that other piece of property would be Charbonneau's Pit, which is obviously a registered U.S. mine, also a volume reduction facility, and a gravel pit. I understand a 100-foot setback for a gravel pit, but up in that area, if you take a look around, you've got trucking terminals, you have a junkyard, a big junk yard. You've got two commercial pool operations that take place, meaning swimming pool operations. So I think if you take a look at the surrounding area, it may be worthwhile to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anything else from anyone? If not, we need a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close.
Motion by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Talamini. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Okay, at this point, we'll go right to the agenda, and do we have a motion? Are you ready to make a decision?
I'll make a motion to approve ZBA 2018-04 application for Newbury Road Enterprises for property located at 68 Newbury Road for variance of section 816.1.3.B.3 minimum set standards for composting, wood chipping facilities to allow reduction in landscape buffer from abutting properties from 100 feet to 25 feet. M1 zone, map 93, block 19, lot 6.
Motion is made. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, discussion. Started.
I mean, I don't see any issue.
Okay, well, you know, I heard a lot of testimony, and a lot of it is whether or not this is a fair setback for this type of operation. And I see that this application went before the planning and zoning. I guess my concern is, we're not at the legislative body. I don't think that's our determination whether this is fair or not, or the regulation is fair or not. I think that's for the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I've been pretty consistent every time somebody's come in for a sign variance or something like that. I've always said that our job is to see whether or not, there is a unreasonable, if there is a hardship in not conducting reasonable use of the property. So, Commission went ahead and they considered it under their legislative powers. They chose not to lower the access. They chose to write a regulation, whether it was, Mr. Dearborn knew about it or not. I think that was properly made and deliberated on in a legislative capacity, which is what the statutes say Planning and Zoning Commission should do, and I don't think the Zoning Board of Appeals needs to second guess. I recall a time when someone came in to change the sign regulations in town, and the commission held a hearing, denied it, and the Planning and Zoning Commission took the Zoning Board of Appeals to court on saying they had usurped their legislative authority. So I think we're in a similar situation if we were to approve this variance, that we would be usurping the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission, held a proper hearing on it, and said, and I may agree that maybe 100 feet is too much, but again, I think that's up to the Planning and Zoning Commission to determine. In fact, they already have a 75-foot, basically a 25-foot variance, because they're grandfathered, as is any property that, properties, Planning and Zoning Commissions make decisions on enacting regulations, and a lot of times it's through experience. So they had, perhaps they saw, there was a need to regulate this type of use, and they chose the 100-foot buffer. Again, I think it's their prerogative to do that, not necessarily ours. And again, the wetlands issue, yeah, there's wetlands on the property again. I think they were there. Someone who buys a piece of property with the eye towards developing it, basically needs to take that into account when they're purchasing property, as to what they can do and what they can't do. So the wetlands are there. There's upland review areas. They're not buffers. You can build on within those upland review areas. All you have to do is make sure that you don't cause any harm to the wetlands during construction or during your operations, and you have to prove that to the Wetlands Commission. They should be issuing permits for that. So that's my feeling. Anyone else?
Okay, I'll go. I approve the variance, and it's mainly because the typical M1 zoning is 20 feet, and Mr. Dearborn has 100 feet, and it was set for the regulations for mining or for, I can't remember what it said, but it was, but to cut it back to 25 plus the road, the access road around, I see reasonable. The hardship would be the wetlands to the east and to the south with his water treatment pond. The property adjoining Mr. Wilcox's property, coming in, he'd be 40 feet from your property where you have the trailers parked. If you have a building there that's 20 feet from the property line, it's going to be the back of the property. You're not going to have a road around that, so I can't see how that's going to lower your property values really, because he's not going to be grinding within that 40 feet. He's going to be grinding more in the middle of the property where he can access it, but that's not, my decision. But I don't see how the granting the variance is going to cause hardship to the neighbor's property. And the runoff, which would be my concern, seeing Mr. Wilcox's property is higher than Dearborn's, the natural water is running to the east, and it's going to go into the water treatment ponds. So I approve it.
I think my concern is the issue with the wetlands. Based on the maps that we're seeing, there is a large, vast area between the two wetlands where a road could be built if the correct permits are given by the wetlands. And I see that as a hardship because it's more work that needs to be done, going through the permit processes and all that, more than it actually being a straight up hardship because the wetlands are there. There's tons of land over here that's currently corn that could be cut out and used as storage. We're not quite sure what this new property is going to be used for, so I'm not going to talk about that. But it is in that area. I just see it as a situation where the permits could be obtained and it could open up another larger area for storage. And I think that should be the way we proceed rather than just assuming that's a hardship and granting this. So for that reason, I will be voting in the negative.
Anyone else want to? Again, alternates can't participate on this one, sorry, on this discussion.
I just have an issue with that piece of property that was stated he bought 5 acres. That's going to be below the detention pond, so the water doesn't go uphill. So to me, that you can't use that property. That isn't a help to them at all. And across the wetland, I think that's a lot to be asked.
Scott?
When somebody buys a property, that they should always keep in consideration when they're going to develop it, the wetlands and what the area is affected by. So that is one concern that I do have. But, I just wanted to point that out. And also, I would hope that in consideration if there is anything getting affected by their neighbors, that it would be, if this were to pass, that they would keep that into consideration when they're doing it to make sure it's not affecting somebody else's business or their property value.
Any other comments? Are we ready for a vote?
Ready.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise their hands.
Aye.
Aye.
We have 3 in favor, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Talamini, Mr. Noble against. We have 2. The motion fails, even though it's 3 and 2 because of the requirements of state statutes that 4 affirmative votes are needed to vary the regulations.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And again, the reasons on the record as stated by the chair and Mr. Davis. 3-2. So it's down. No, and you stated the reasons for it. But I guess we got to stay within the record. It's always raises and I know why. But we did it. Okay, we have some additional business to consider, which is the approval of minutes for August 6th. I wasn't here, so I'll rely on your judgment as to whether they're accurate or not.
I will make a motion to approve the Town of East Windsor Zoning Board of Appeals minutes of regular meeting for August 6, 2018 as presented.
Yes.
Second.
A motion by Morgan, Mr. Davis seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll abstain because I wasn't here. So, that passes. Next motion.
Participation?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, public participation tomorrow. Anyone wants to speak on anything that regarding our deliberations or anything else that comes into your mind? Yes, sir.
Please, 39 Church Street. I want to commend the members for their deliberations and thoughtful work in the process. I think y'all did a great job.
Thank you. All right.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's around 52,000.